and welcome to another episode of the Connecticut Creative Collaborative. I am Maryann Cruz, business strategist and coach, and co-founder of C3 Collaborative.
And I'm John Jaramillo, leadership coach and consultant. And this show, Maryann and I had put together just based on the networks of people that we've known. We just realized that we know an amazing amount of people from different backgrounds that are creatives in their own form. So we wanted to kind of pick their brains about what it is they're up to, what it is they do, what it is they specialize, their inspirations, and where they feel their fields are going. Maryann comes at it from like the process, the business side. I come at it from the development side, but both of us are just as curious about people. So that's what we want to do, is kind of drag them in here and just get to know what they're all about.
And so today we have with us Erich Davis, who is Chief Creative at J Davis Aesthetics. He's an artist and sculptor. Erich, welcome.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome, buddy. Welcome.
See you.
We're excited that you're here. So we will get straight into it. And so if for those of us who don't really know you, give us a little bit about, or tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do, and we'll start from there.
Cool. Yeah, my name's Erich Davis. I'm a sculptor and a custom fabricator. My company basically produces high-end custom fabrications, everything from public sculpture to custom furniture. We do work for commercial and residential clients. Fancy tables, outdoor sculpture. Sometimes we'll do gates and railings, signage, the crazy stuff that kind of has to come up, be thought of independently on a per project basis. So we don't never make anything twice unless somebody orders two of them. So.
Erich, when it comes to, again, a show about creatives, I know you are fabricating, you're a sculptor, artist, you're also doing some teaching, instructing. When it comes to your creative mindset, how does that translate into your work? How do you bring that into your work? How is it reflected in your work? What is your process?
Right. So most of the stuff, like I said, we do is custom. So each project is, tends to be different. So what we might see, or what I might see from an architect, will be very different than I'd see from like a homeowner or a restaurateur or something like that. So for me, it really comes down to trying to understand a problem. And so a lot of what I do is more like the problem solving, and sort of we look at the sort of the full picture, who's bringing this challenge or the sort of the project to us. What are their goals and what are they trying to kind of get out of it? Where their preferences, do they have any sort of reference, just gathering information. And then, the creative part for me, and the part of what I tend to want to bring to the table is sort of the meaning behind it. So how is this going to resonate with both the people that I'm working with? How is that going to add our collaboration? How's our collaboration going to add meaning to both the project, but also how that project and the outcome of it, whatever we produce, is going to impact other people. So, for example, in a restaurant, a lot of the times we'll do either a custom seating or, some kind of, we've done a few signs that really are kind of like the focal point. And it's really all about how is that going to positively impact the business that we're working with. Conversely, if we're if we're going to produce a public sculpture, right? It's really all about the wow factor and how people are going to receive it. Sometimes when we work with other artists, we get really specific direction. So there's not as much creativity in terms of what our message is as much as there is in how do we actually do the things we're being asked to do. So some of it's real technical, and the creativity kind of spans between how do I figure this out to what am I trying to say. So I like to get a lot of, as much as I can, into of a conversation going between the clients and then obviously rhetorically to who their end audience is.
So have you kind of streamlined that process? I can imagine that everyone is unique and individual, but have you gotten kind of into this this mindset as you've gone through your career, as you've gone through your work, where you kind of are able to maybe streamline or ask certain questions, or what are things that you've picked up as you've gone through this process that have allowed you to kind of narrow what it is your clients may need from you?
Yeah. I think at the beginning, there's always a lot of Q&A. There's always a meeting. There's always that startup, right? That's a mandatory. And
Yeah.
then in terms of streamlining it, you know, the sort of the nuts and bolts of a process of a typical project will be, you know, the initial conversation, we meet, we discuss the ideas, and then I'll go in and, you know, put together some drawings and sketches, you know, a low tier to a high tier. If they already have a budget in mind, you know, we kind of stick within a certain range of what can and can't be done based on, you know, financials, you know, and then basically everybody agrees, and then we just start moving forward. You know, from there we get into materials ordering, and then scheduling. How's that going to fit within all the other projects? So it's not, I wouldn't say streamlined, but there's a flow to it, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
everything's a little different. We could have
Yep.
two huge projects at the same time, and we got to kind of move everything around and make sure each piece has its own dedicated space. Because everything we do takes up space, right? That's sort of the one kind of universal challenge, is making sure we have enough space to do everything. Or we could have a bunch of little things and we're like on top of each other. So it's not a one size fits all thing. I would say in terms of streamlining, I'd love to streamline billing, to be honest with you. But
Yeah.
but other than that, everything is you know, everything is
Yeah, and I figured it was hard to pinpoint that every project's going to look the same. Maybe when you think you have some kind of a flow down in terms of the process, that there's going to come along a project that's just going to kind of blow that up, and you have to kind of customize it, just your own process to that project. You had mentioned working with other artists. Now, do you mean other artists in your shop, or other artists that from other shops that kind of you're collaborating with on a project?
right. Both. But so a lot of the times, I could specifically talk to a couple of relationships. We will often be asked to make art for other artists because either they don't have the facilities and the equipment to do so, or they have an idea that they can't possibly figure out how to get it done. They don't quite technically know how to do it. They know what they want to do, but they don't know how to do it. And so, for example, the flight sculpture at the University of New Haven, you know, I could have been outbid by another fabrication shop that just does welding, right? But because I understand like the aesthetics of it and what the artist, she's also an architect, what my artist friend Marissa really wanted was kind of this attention to detail, making sure that the finishes are consistent, the lines are right, you know, all the welds are clean and not, you know, there's no mess. And so that the level of work that we do, we do that all the time. Welding shop might not do that. So another artist, an old fella by the name of Joe Saccio, came to us with this sculpture that had been outside for 20 years and was falling apart. And he had no, you know, like his patron really was like, what do we do? Do we throw it out? How do we deal with this? And he had no idea what to do. So he just said, can you do this? And we went and picked it up and it fell apart along the way to get it done. But then we had to rebuild the whole thing. And, you know, it's back outside and it's weatherproof for another 20 or 30 years because, you know, we just problem solved and figured out how to do it. So the relationships with artists are almost always unique. They're just, there's no way to tell what is going to come through. You know, we've done armatures for various artists locally, which basically bending metal so that they could cast things around it. What else have we done? Yeah, I mean, just the same crew of people keep showing up. So I've been doing work for that guy Joe for a while. He's really kind of getting up there, and you can't lift anything. So there's just sort of, we're just a pair of hands for him in some ways.
Yeah.
but also help him think about how to, produce what he wants to produce conceptually. So
Now, taking into account everything you shared right now, everything that goes into it, how it's different from project to project, anything you may take on, what is it from your past? This is what I'm always curious about. What is it from your past that kind of inspired you, your creative flair? When did that start? And then how did you end up in the field doing the work that you're doing now?
Right. I've always been interested in, drawing or, making work. I think from the first time my dad showed me a picture of a watercolor that he painted of me and my sister, and I was like, oh, how come you don't do that anymore? And he said, well, I just never stuck with it. And so that kind of made me think like, well, I'd like to do that forever. And so I kind of, that's sort of where it started. But throughout, high school and even into college, like there was a little while that I was primarily focused on art and art making. But I'm kind of, my mom moved around a bit. My mom got remarried when I was in high school. So I went from an all art high school in Norwich, Connecticut called NFA. And that was like sort of the real artist path to go to the city and, go to art school in the city. And then I moved to Florida and went from art to athletics like instantly because it's just a different culture. And then I didn't really get to fall back in love with art again until I was in college and after I stopped playing baseball. And since then I haven't really stopped, so I bring a lot of I feel like I bring a lot of the work ethic from sports and athletics into my work.
Okay.
So, I don't ever really slow down, and I'm kind of always pushing the envelope and trying to see what we can do better. I think the thing that keeps me going is that there's just there's so much opportunity to do new things and different things and sort of bring a conversation into the work itself that I feel like has been coming to the forefront, as I'm getting up there as a creator. I think what I really like to hang on to is the idea of this sort of what we leave behind, right? So what is our legacy from a physical standpoint? So we work a lot with like permanent materials. We don't make stuff that falls apart at all ever. And from a physical perspective, and then also what is that saying and how does that make an impact? Those are pretty important things that I've always kind of hung on to.
So in that type of field where obviously your clients will have ideas of what they want to see, you'll get input from, artist friends, artist collaborators, collaboration, sorry. How do you stay inspired? So aside from the ideas they may bring to the table, how do you bring what you bring to the table? Where does that come from? Because I mean, I can imagine it may be hard to be inspired on an ongoing basis. Like, what is it that fires you up in terms of ideas and designs?
I get re-inspired every time we get a new project. It's just the way my brain works. It's like, it's a new thing, so it's never boring, right? I'm never gonna get tired of it, and I would hate to do the same thing over and over again. Sorry if anybody's listening. Can't do that. It's just,
Yeah,
I would shrivel up and be miserable human. So just the collaboration itself and the interaction between other creative people and even just people who are not creative who come to me to be inspired, like that's really inspiring to myself. Just like, how am I giving another person a window into a creative process that they would otherwise not have access to, just sharing inspiration or potential ideas and just making people go, wow, I never thought about that. And I'm not really trying, I'm just sort of doing my thing. But just, yeah, I think the best part about doing custom work is exactly that. It's an endless pool for inspiration. And most of that that I enjoy comes from just the back and forth between the people, you know, and how are we seeing our ideas develop and grow. I feel like that's the best, that's where I get the most inspiration. The work is work, actually.
Yeah.
The work itself is work, you know. It's the idea part and the problem solving part and the getting the messaging right, you know, from here and here. That's the inspiration. So.
And I mean, I had just met Eric probably 2 months ago in a different group, a networking group, development forum kind of thing. And you see how people interact in those things. And it's crazy just to think that from what I know of you, having spoken to you in that forum or heard you speak, talk to you one-on-one in different circumstances, it's amazing that your personality, the way that I understood you, sharing with people, motivating people, kind of creating these different conversations. To me, based on what I see, it's amazing that that personality is kind of what you just described in the work that you do, trying to bring all these different ideas, people, collaborators together. It's amazing how that translates and how it's embodied in your work. So that's amazing to hear that, because that was going to be one of my questions, was how does what I know of you kind of translate into your work? And I think you broke it down beautifully, man. So thank you for that answer.
Thanks. I'm blushing.
Hey, I mean it, man.
Thanks. I'm just doing it, you know, the only way I know how. So something there, I guess.
Oh, right on, man.
Yeah, just, you know, I think for me, and having, you know, just hearing you say that and being a part of that group, like I had no idea, right, that there was a room for me in the space like that. And sort of that, and these interactions, you know, that we're having now sort of inspire me to do it more and get out there and be a little bit more sort of visible in a leadership way. And still trying to figure out what that looks like, but either way, yeah, but it's great. And I appreciate that feedback.
Definitely.
And I want to dig a little deeper, because that's what I do. And so you had mentioned high school, college, and being inspired, and now we know who you are. What was the journey in between?
Between
college and being inspired to now and the artist that you are?
Wow. So let's see, I'll just do the sort of the chronological thing and then talk about the inside out. Right after school, I was so I double majored in fine art and graphic design in college because I wanted to have some kind of creative career. And my baseball dreams went bye-bye after my sophomore year. So I really dove into making art. And I started out as basically stone sculptor, carving stone. And then knowing that there was a little bit of a gap in the income potential there, I took the marketing and graphic design portion of my education and went into marketing. So I spent my first, I want to say like 4 or 5 years out of college, just bouncing between marketing agencies and learning about sort of the corporate structure and, all of that stuff. And quickly found out that it was not for me. Just knowing that I'm using my ability creatively to sell sugar water to diabetes candidates was not what I wanted to do. So I kind of went out on my own and did a lot of freelancing and soul searching, and it was tricky getting myself going after I didn't have like a standard place to go, a job. And so I decided that I really needed to push more back toward my sculpture and making things. So I went to school to learn how to weld so that I could, either get a job in that or start making my own stuff. So I had this vision of having a foundry, which, if you don't know what a foundry it is where they cast metal. So I'd always had this vision to do that sort of traditional work. So I figured, oh, I better go learn how to weld. And I did that for a bit. And then I got a job at a welding shop. And first week on the job, I lost the tips of these fingers in a machine, which was not a good day. But it didn't really, I mean, it slowed me down a little, but I went right back to work there, all bandaged up, kept working, because I didn't, you know, I went there to work, to learn. And so after about a year, I got laid off and then took the money from the medical settlement for this thing and started my own business. Just started making furniture, started doing railings, like a lot of blacksmithing, built my own forge, which if you don't know what that is the little chamber that heats up the steel so that you can bend it and make all the scroll work. So I built a couple of those, and just started going out and chasing down work. I had a workshop in Hamden, Connecticut, for a few years. And then a couple things happened. I got married, bought a house, then the market crashed. So there was, you know, that gap, no real work for a bit, went back into graphic design, and then jumped back into doing my, you know, my sculpture stuff again after I couldn't handle doing the graphic design thing anymore. But mostly bounced around, just trying to like make it happen, make it all work. I never put down my tools. I just kept, you know, trying to, yeah, just keep going for it. And some, you know, years were better than others, and some years really just sucked. In 2017, I really jumped all the way back into this work, and I got a couple of really big commissions, and they've been getting kind of better and better ever since. So, so from, I guess, college to now, a lot of what now inspires me is only possible because I have sort of this confidence that nothing's really going to stop me. I'm not going to quit, and it won't, you know, no matter what, I'm going to find a way. So, you know, this time right now, this whole coronavirus and the economy going crazy, I'm just kind of like waiting for it to kick back up again and keep digging. So.
Eric, quick question. I remember you gave a tour of your shop, I think maybe a few weeks after I met you, maybe it was like a month and a half ago, maybe 7 weeks ago, something like that.
Yep.
And I know you did it on Zoom. You were walking around your shop with a camera, I think on like a tripod of some kind.
Mm-hmm.
Did you record that at all?
I believe it was recorded. I have to ask them. I'm pretty sure that it was. And if not, I'll do another one because it's fun.
Yeah, just let us know and we can include that in there. I thought it was interesting. He just jumped from machine to machine, from material to material, to just kind of describe what it was for, describing his shop, how he uses it, how he manages everything that's in the shop, the materials, the space that he has. So it gives you a good idea of just how much Eric touches all these different pieces. So if we'll be in touch, but if you do have that somewhere, I'll share it definitely.
Yeah,
when
I'll
I
reach
post this
out.
video. Yeah, definitely.
I'll reach out and find out if I have it.
So
More, dig in.
no. I was just thinking, you're so resilient and you have grit, and you know, I think most artists, most creatives have that. So we know what your past was. We have a little bit of your history. How do you envision your future? What does your future, for you, but not only for you, how do you see it for the industry?
Right. Well, for me, it's as simple as, you know, keep going. But I have some plans about how to make that, you know, work. I think for me, it's like, if I could have anything that looked like stability, like repeat business, this would be the time where I start to kind of put that together, because you know, while I love doing all the custom stuff, there are not a ton of custom projects that are super profitable. So, you know, always have to be running on multiple things at the same time to keep the doors open. And when it slows down like this, it gets really, you know, it gets kind of scary. But for me, like that's in the works. You know, something that's going to be a continuous stream is it's time. And but it's not going to be the only thing. It's going to be one of those sort of, I need to have that going so that I can do the cooler creative projects, be a little bit more selective and go after bigger things because they take more time. But having that little economic engine going on the side is going to be a necessity. Again, still trying to figure out what that is exactly. Got a few ideas going, and I'll share more when they're more fleshed out. But in terms of the industry, you know, I think it's hard for me to pin. I think the industry, and if I could just kind of try to wrap what I do into an industry, I would say there is always going to be need for someone to do the type of work that we do. It's kind of a niche thing where, you know, a lot of people are like designers and architects and things like that are used to buying products and things like that, but there are always some projects that are like, I need to do this crazy thing because that's their creative vision and they want to see something new happen. So that's always going to be out there. It's just how I position myself to be available to those people that's probably going to change a little bit. The public sculpture thing and placemaking, I think placemaking and in-person experiences are going to get so much more valuable because of what we're going through right now. Everyone's locked in their homes and just sort of taken for granted that you can't walk around and just, you know, go visit new things. So new experiences and you know, the way that different organizations treat their space and their physical realm is gonna be, I think it's gonna get a little bit more important. It's gonna be a lot less, I hope, cookie cutter stuff going on out there. And I think that companies are going to spend and organizations are going to spend more money on that type of thing. And I think even municipalities, I think about that because there's just so much of a push right now culturally to kind of put equity, you know, back into different types of neighborhoods. And I think that beautification and park spaces and anything that is inspiring other people to kind of be and give them pride in their neighborhood, like all that stuff's going to be real important in the coming, I would think, decades. But yeah, I think that's a good, you know, sort of assessment for based on what I do. Industry, it's hard. Like I said, when you do your taxes, right? There's no line for what I do. There's no like, am I a manufacturer? I don't know. Am I am I furniture maker? Sometimes, you know. So it's like, it's hard to put an industry to it, but you know, we do what we can.
So Eric, speaking of the future, what advice would you, there's a few things here. What advice would you have for people trying to follow that path? And I mean, it's not a clear-cut path. You had your own, and you kind of landed in this area. What kind of advice would you have for somebody that's in that that wants to go in that general direction? And then I know you've done some instruction as well. So I was just curious if you could just speak to that and how that may play into the information or the guidance, the encouragement that you may give to others that are kind of following your similar creative path.
Right. Well, let's see. I would say if I was going to give somebody any advice, it would be to get in with somebody else who's already doing it and just try to learn as much as you can. You know, even if it's not one shop, it could be a couple of different ones. So there's actually a big time public sculptor, sculpture fabricator, like literally 100 yards from us, who's been doing it for 50 years. And we're just kind of getting started, but like, go check out places that have been doing it for a long time. Get experience doing the work, just like anything. As an individual, just I think the collaboration part and not being afraid to team up is a big deal. I think a lot of artists, we'll just say artists, like to own their work and like to own the process and like to own all the little bits and pieces that go into it. So there's a sort of sense of pride, but also to me, that's, and I don't, this is not a dig on any of my artist friends, but to me, like I get a lot more out of the back and forth, and there's much more possibility because of the things that I don't know, and I get to see other people's perspective. And I think that if you can be open to that as a creative person, you're willing to suck it up and, learn from other people's experience, it's definitely going to pay out long term. For me, in terms of the education side and teaching, I love mixing it up with people, and I love kind of getting them in a workshop and letting them play. The trouble with that can be, at least in my situation, if I'm going to go to an arts organization, I might not get paid for the time that's really worth it to me. And I'm not at present in a position to have my space used for like a workshop space.
Yeah.
So at some point or another, what I'm hoping to do is integrate some kind of internship into what we do, so that someone could come and be a part of the process when we're doing work. That just inviting people who are interested, it's just sort of like I mentioned, go do it with someone else, inviting other people to come check out what we do, even if it's on a couple of days, like come just be part of it and have that be part of the experience, all the way up to potentially working with universities for school credit and things like that. I have this really crazy long-term dream of having some kind of a school that's, around the process of making, but also growth through the process of making. So growth as a human, not just growth, career-wise. So.
Love it, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I would have to say that I guess this is what wraps up the show. But if you, John, did you have any additional questions for Erich?
No. I mean, Erich, just throw out your website and your contact information, just so people can go get a sense for what it is you do, the kind of work. Because you're right, there's just so much that you just can't encompass it in one name. So I think if people go to your website and see the works that you have, I think it'll add a lot to this conversation. Sure.
It's ejdavisaesthetics.com. It's a mouthful. But it's up there on the internet. And you can contact me through the contact form there, so that I'm usually pretty accessible via email. And if anybody has any questions or wants to kind of chat, just give me a shout. Erich's a very, very open guy, very amazing with people, very open, listening just as much as sharing. So if you're even curious about the work that he does, I highly recommend touching base with Erich. What about you, Maryann? Do you have any other questions?
No, just thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for enlightening us as to your process and all you do, and love the fact that you're so resilient, and hopefully, some of these messages will actually come through and inspire somebody else. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it, guys.
I second that. And for those watching, thank you for watching this episode of the Connecticut Creative Collaborative. If you do know of any creatives, again, that's anybody from a sculptor or artist, a writer, painter, all the way to whatever job you wouldn't even associate at first as a creative. There's so many creative aspects to every industry. We can pull them out. We can pick people's brains. So if you can do that, please do that and reach out to us. You'll see our information when we post this video. Until the next time, thank you so much. And Erich, again, thank you, buddy. And can't wait to hear about what you do in the future.
Very good. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.